Ladies and gentlemen, analysts and executives, guest speakers, and our distinguished sponsors, welcome to Listen 2017. Introducing Coal Miner's Vice President of Marketing and your event host, Scott Kendrick.
Welcome to my harebrained meeting. Act like some economy airplane seating. Trying to compete at your fair game meeting, but I send my salams if you should.
And welcome. Wasn't that a great video? It's kind of like a speech recognition inside joke. It really illustrates the importance of context, right? Like even without context, even humans can't understand one another. So context is everything. Well, welcome to Listen 2017. For those that attended last year, welcome back to the Opal. And for those of you that have never been to the Opal, what a great venue, right? Can we get some applause for the venue? Yeah. This venue is just a perfect size for our event. We had a great time last year. We had to come back. The staff does a great job. Sorry I couldn't have had a little bit better weather for you guys yesterday on the boat, but I think everything worked out well. We've got plenty of sunshine over the next couple days, and things are going to warm up. So my job when I kick off this event is to provide some context around our theme, and this year's theme is Pervasive Insight. And I started prepping for the conference, and I had a little bit of a distraction. It was actually a massive distraction. This is Irma. Everybody say hi, Irma. I didn't think that would work. Awesome. Some of you might recognize Irma. Irma was one of the largest storms ever to form in the Atlantic Basin. She was 5 times the size of Hurricane Andrew, and for much of her life had wind speeds over 200 miles an hour. This is basically like an F4 tornado the size of Texas. It was a scary storm. And so, you know, for a period of time, I forgot about Listen. It's amazing how your mindset and your priorities change when you start thinking about protection of loved ones, protection of property, and survival. Right? So that's what I did. I got very focused on my hurricane preparation plan. You know, my first step was to get my family to safety. I have a wife and an 8-year-old daughter. And so I thought I would take the opportunity to actually send them back to Canada, where we're from, spend some time with family. And I made this decision very early in the process, about a week before the storm came. And even though I made that decision very quickly, there were no flights out of Fort Myers. Thankfully, I found some reasonable flights out of Orlando. Orlando, on a good day, is about a 3-hour drive from Fort Myers. So that's what I did, is I packed up the family in the SUV and sent them on their way to Orlando to catch their flight. Now, 20 minutes into their drive, they hit stop-and-go traffic. There was basically a mass exodus out of Florida, even a week before the storm came. And there's only 2 ways out of the state, right? We've got the I-95 on the East Coast and the I-75 on the West Coast. And so my wife called me up. She was using her in-car nav, and so I quickly jumped online. I logged into Waze. We talked about Waze last year and the insight provided by crowdsourced traffic data. And sure enough, I could see that the I-75 was backed up for dozens of miles, but State Road 17 looked clear and open, because everybody was trying to get as far north as possible. Nobody was planning trips to Disney at this point. So I redirected them onto State Road 17, and sure enough, they made it to Orlando in 3.5 hours and made their flights. So now I had to start thinking about my plan, right? I didn't know if I was staying or if I was going. I needed to start focusing on protecting our property and boarding up, and stocking up on critical supplies. Now, I don't know if you guys have not, for those that have not prepared for a storm like this, it's amazing how demand for these supplies quickly outruns the ability to kind of keep up with that demand. And so things like water, ice, batteries, generators, I mean, shelves were just empty of these things. This is my local Lowe's, and the Home Depot looked the exact same. This is the plywood aisle. There was no plywood for over a week. They were actually bringing plywood in every day, but it never made it to the shelves. People were basically lining up and taking it as it came off the truck. So the other critical resource was gas. If I was going to stay, there was a good chance that we would be without power for some time. And so I needed to make sure I had gas to power a generator. If I was leaving, I needed to make sure I had enough gas in my vehicle, because the last thing I would want to do is run out of gas while I was trying to evacuate and have to ride out the storm on the side of the road. But gas was very limited all over the state. The entire state was impacted because the storm was so big. Nobody knew which direction it was going to go. Particularly in Fort Myers, we were short on gas. And so I turned to Gas Buddy. Now, for those of you that don't live in Houston or Florida, put up your hand if you've ever used GasBuddy. Okay, yeah, not too many people. I would say less than a quarter of the room. This was one of the most downloaded apps of all apps during the times of Harvey and Irma. In fact, days before Irma, downloads increased from 30,000 to 350,000 downloads a day. Its primary purpose is to provide gas price comparison. And I don't know if I'm lazy or fortunate, but I'm not one that's going to drive out of my way to save a few cents per gallon of gas. But GasBuddy played a critical role during the storm. GasBuddy would identify stations that actually had fuel supplies. It would also identify stations that had power, because in order to get gas, you need two things. You need fuel and you need power to pump the fuel. So with the insight provided to me by GasBuddy, I was able to fill up my truck and fill up a couple extra cans of gas, and so I was prepared. Now, I later found out that GasBuddy actually sent 2 data analysts to work with the state of Florida following the storm to redirect resupplies in areas where they were most needed. This wasn't the only tech company to get involved. Google was updating Google Maps in real time based on state-fed data on road closures, so evacuees could get to their destination safely. Esri, who is a map data company, was creating maps of communities based on vulnerability to storm impacts, and they leveraged CDC data to identify communities that had high volumes of elderly or folks with disabilities. And then Comcast actually opened up free Wi-Fi hotspots all around the state. And that redundancy in communications infrastructure was critical. Because during the storm, at times, 911 systems became overwhelmed. And in fact, in Collier County, just south of where we live, the 911 system failed. So people were turning to social media to basically call out for help. So once I realized that the storm was headed to Fort Myers, in fact, they predicted a 9-foot storm surge in my community, I decided it was time to get out of here. And I literally had no plan. I jumped on the highway at 11:30 at night and started driving across the state aimlessly. Thankfully, our VP of Research, Mike Dwyer, called me up and offered me some shelter on the east coast of Florida. So I made it to safety. And while we were hunkered down in the storm, I turned to one of my other favorite apps, Wind Alert. I'm a passionate kiteboarder, and so I have a subscription to this service, Wind Alert. And I absolutely love their tagline, better data, better decisions. That could be CallMiner's tagline. And so during the storm, and Wind Alert is a service that basically has wind meters, both proprietary and public, all over the world. And you can see wind speeds in real time. You can also see forecast information. And so during the storm, while we were hunkered down, we were watching these wind speeds and determining what was the wind like around where we were staying, how bad was it getting. More importantly, we were looking at wind meters around where we own property. And thankfully, with the insight from Wind Alert, I was feeling much more comfortable that I was going to return to a home that was in decent shape, because we never got to those wind gusts of 150, 200 miles an hour in my area. We only ever got up to around 85 miles an hour. So I was feeling good about that. I also used Wind Alert to track when the wind started to subside and it was safe to get back on the highway, drive across the coast, and start assessing damage in the recovery process. Now, I've prepared probably for 5 hurricanes in my lifetime, which is a lot for a guy who grew up in Canada. But clearly, it was a little bit different this time. I had a lot more data, a lot more information to help me make decisions. So I started doing some research, and I came across something called Open Data Houston. Now, apparently, open data initiatives are very common, or becoming more common in communities around the country. This is where the government shares their data resources that they have with the public and third parties to build applications to better the community. And around the time of Harvey, before it landed and after landfall, there's all kinds of applications developed to support with the preparation and recovery process. This one particular application I don't think was built specifically for Harvey, but I thought it was very interesting. And if you've ever used Eureka Live, you know exactly how this works, right? So this is a map of water meters in the bayous and waterways around Houston. And the little green squares means everything's okay. You don't have to worry about it. It means the water levels are where they need to be. Once the green squares turn to yellow, now there's a bit of a concern. You might want to start making a plan. It means the water levels are rising, getting near the crest of the banks. And then finally, when they turn red, now the water has overtopped the crest of the banks and we have a flood situation. So this is what the map looked like a day before Harvey made landfall, and here's what it looked like the day after Harvey made landfall. So with this insight, citizens were able to make good decisions about, should they leave? Do they have a safe path that they can travel on? Or is it basically time to hit higher ground? And so I first read about open data and Open Data Houston from a group called the Sunlight Foundation. And I love this quote that says, when cities work with their communities to provide actionable information, it can and does save lives, reunite property, and target resources where they're needed. And that term, actionable information, we use that all the time in our industry, right? Actionable information, actionable insight. And this is a great kind of definition of the concept of pervasive insight. It's about getting the right data to the right people at the right time. And I believe this statement. When Katrina made landfall in 2005, Facebook was only a year old. It had 5 million users. Twitter didn't exist. None of these other applications I'm talking about existed. And the storm-related fatalities were conservatively estimated to be 1,800 people. This year, with all the storms that we've had, storm-related fatalities have been less than 400. Now, a caveat about that point, number one is Puerto Rico is still suffering. 80% of the island still has no power. So please, if you have the opportunity, help Puerto Rico. They can use our help. Secondly, probably all the data analysts in the room right now are saying, wait a sec, you can't correlate those two things. And you're absolutely right. I can't make that direct correlation. There are different geographic, economic, and sociologic factors associated with Katrina that didn't exist this year. But I'm pretty confident that with better data, we are making better decisions. And this got me thinking, keeping up with current events as I was prepping for this event. We're doing all this great stuff to protect our citizens during storms. We've got storm prediction paths and spaghetti plots, and we can predict the storm surge and water levels and all that stuff. It seems like we could apply that in other areas. And so, it just crossed my mind that I was surprised that we've got nothing or nobody that seems to be tracking or alerting for patterns of suspicious gun buying behavior. I thought that was interesting. So, if we turn to business for a second, pervasive insight. This concept has been around for a long time. Analysts have been discussing it for 10 years, and it's a simple concept. It basically says the more broadly you distribute information across your organization, the quicker you're going to make decisions. And the quicker you make decisions, the quicker you can act on those. Organizations that employ a pervasive insight or pervasive BI strategy are going to outperform those that don't. This is a competitive advantage. And we became very enamored with this concept about 5 years ago when we invented MyEureka, because we saw the opportunity to get data out of the analyst cubicles and into the hands of those that can act on it, into the hands of the agents and the supervisors. In fact, this became part of our mission statement, which says, we deliver products that produce usable feedback, which ensures the democratization of mission-critical information to all levels of the organization. And we've got some exciting news that we're going to announce at 4:30 in Bruce McMahon's session around MyEureka. And we're in the era of big data. We're inundated with data. The Internet of Things, these are appliances and machines that are connected to the Internet without a user interface. It was estimated to be 16 billion things in the year 2015. That's more than twice the number of people. And that number is estimated to grow to 30 billion by the year 2020. In fact, Intel had once estimated that number to get as high as 200 billion by 2020. So that's a lot of devices connected and a lot of data and information that's being produced. I think some of you are wondering, what's this a picture of? That's my latest thing of the internet. That's my garage door opener. It's connected. Why not? But thankfully, we've got advances in analytics, artificial intelligence, and machine learning that are really helping data become much more interpretable, because it's not all about big data. It's about insight and information that we can use. And in this era, organizations who view their business through a lens of data and analytics, not processes, the data and analytics ones are going to win. It's not like in the manufacturing days where it was all about lean processes. A great example of this is Netflix. So Netflix was a mail order DVD company. They actually still do that. And this is a company that now has an $80 billion market cap. It's not because they perfected mail order processes. It's not even because they were kind of leaders in terms of data streaming. They've got all kinds of competition in that space now. It's because they had better customer intelligence around likes and dislikes of programming. That has propelled them to be one of the top producers of original content on TV today. Shows like Orange is the New Black, 13 Reasons, Making a Murderer, Narcos, Bloodline. They outbid AMC and HBO for House of Cards without ever seeing a single episode, simply because their data models informed them that this was a show that was going to be a hit. You guys all get this, or at least most of you do. That's why you've invested in engagement analytics. You understand the gold that is in those conversations, right? And for those of you that have not invested in engagement analytics yet, is Dan Lawrence in the room? Dan? At the back there? Okay, so he's our new VP of Sales. He'll be happy to talk to you. He's got contracts in his pockets. But some of you might only be focusing on the improvements that this data can bring to your call center. But the intelligence in your customer conversations extends far beyond just how you can improve your call center. And also, if you're thinking about the advantage it gives you as an individual, having this insight into your customer conversations, think about the advantage that we all share as a community, right? There's probably one of the largest data stores of customer engagement analytics data in this room, right? So that's my ask of you over the next 2 days, is share that knowledge, share your insight, particularly how you understand how your customers like to engage with you, but maybe more importantly, how you have defined best practices to extract insight from those customer engagements. That's what Listen is all about. Now, we asked a few of you prior to the event how you're using data based on your customer engagements, and we produced a couple videos. This first one is a brand that you will recognize, and we were really impressed with the forward thinking in terms of how they're applying their data. So if we could roll the first video, take a look.
SiriusXM is a satellite radio company that is approaching almost 18 plus years in operation. We have about 35 million customers today who subscribe to our subscription satellite radio service. Our CFO has said we really are one of the largest direct marketing companies in the United States today. And a direct marketing company in 2017 really requires the use of data in order to develop the strategy and make sure that you're driving to the right subscribers.
In listener care, we use data all the time for everything. We use it to improve performance of our agents. We use it to understand how satisfied our customers are, how we use it to find out what they're listening to, what their preferences are. So data is very important.
We're a continuous improvement company, so we really look to always drive improvements for our company so that we can always reward our shareholders. We've started building partnerships with companies like CallMiner to allow us to have that data set. Eureka is such a powerful tool. So having the ability to understand what our customers say to us within 24 hours of having that conversation is very powerful to our business.
We know that CallMiner in the call center will tremendously help us from an efficiency standpoint, but also enable the business at large to really gain better insights as to what our customers are saying and what they want when they're talking about our service.
We want to be able to look into all of our interactions and find out, is there any predictive marketing that we can pick out of that? What do we know about our customers? What do we not know about our customers? Do we have processes in place that are causing our own headache for the customer?
Whenever we change a channel on SiriusXM, the number one question our programming team is, how many people called? What do they do? And no matter what your CRM system is, you're never going to capture accurate data to feed back to your programming team. We can really tell our programming team how many people called today and said they hate the fact that Faction is gone and Guns N' Roses is on the air.
If we decide to launch a new product, how quickly can we get information out to the people, the product developers, to say this is what customers are saying, here's the pain points, here's where they need more information.
We don't want to make decisions on a sample size of 10 or 20. So with CallMiner, right, what we've been able to do is take our sample size from 20 to 2 million and really listen to every single call that's happening in the call center We know that if our sales organization is relying on some of this information to be able to close sales, we know that our outbound organization is really leveraging the right content points to make sure that they're selling appropriately. We know that our retention organization is following the strategy and really making sure that they're delivering the best experience for the customer. I think that as we continue to allow CallMiner to show benefits or to distribute the data and information that we're learning, my expectation is that people both inside the organization and partner organizations outside of SiriusXM will be clamoring at the door for information that CallMiner can provide them.
Eureka's allowed us to know what's happening with our business.
This is not just a call center tool, but this is a real business tool.
Thank you, Sirius. Thank you, Gene. So yeah, great video. You guys don't get to see what ends up on the cutting room floor, and there's all kinds of discussion around agent performance and call efficiency and reducing silence, that type of stuff. But we really kind of latched onto that story about how they're using it to improve their business as a whole. This next video is about an organization that has really embraced the concept of pervasive insight, pervasive BI. And they're taking data and information that they get out of CallMiner Eureka and really distributing it across the organization. So if we could roll the next video.
AmeriCollect is a collection agency that handles medical debt from medical providers. When you have such debt, you really need to take a sensitivity as to how you approach in collecting the balances from those patients.
AmeriCollect provides a better patient experience by being ridiculously nice. It's the belief in treating patients the right way in order to collect the accounts.
We have the ability to use CallMiner to monitor that we are being sensitive so we can help them be able to make that payment. Also, of course, generating revenue for AmeriCollect and our clients.
People appreciate that you understand their situations are not something that they asked for. Nobody asks for these medical bills. So we understand that, and we try to be fair about helping them to achieve the goals of getting out of this debt.
Data is very important to our business. Data drives all of the decisions that we make.
When you're making hundreds of phone calls a day, that's a lot of data. And the more insight that you can get into those phone calls, the better decisions you can make with that data. We are using CallMiner across the board in all our departments.
When collectors hit the floor, immediately they are given access to My Eureka. And within My Eureka, they can see the different parts of the call.
We also use My Eureka to show management how not only individuals are doing, but teams, and then collection floor as a whole, as well as our extended business office.
We're able to see what the top collectors are doing and help encourage the people who have just started to get to that level. I think in the beginning we maybe thought that the best collectors just brought in the most amount of money, but that's really not the case, and we found that through CallMiner. I'm looking at CallMiner and My Eureka probably 3 times a day just to see what collectors are on track for what and to help them improve. My collectors can monitor them on their own, and on a weekly basis we can come together and talk about it and set clear goals for them.
Eureka makes my job better because when I find myself struggling, maybe falling short on a goal, I can look at my scores and I look at them on a daily basis, and I can honestly tell you that I improved as a collector, and I can see that even the newest collectors improve at a very quick rate by using this kind of technology.
That insight, that transparency by having scores on a dashboard visible on a day-to-day basis lets me know that A, I'm doing my job, and B, that I'm effective at doing my job.
I had a recent situation where there was a woman whose husband had just passed away. She had 3 small children, and using those words that work, I was able to offer her a solution to take care of the balance in one payment, and she was so grateful. Those words really helped me stay on task and find the best solution for her.
The greatest business value that we're getting from CallMiner is that we didn't know what we were missing. CallMiner gives us that pervasive insight to know what we're doing is working or not working, so that we can make positive changes and always be doing our best.
We are ridiculously nice.
Ridiculously nice.
Ridiculously nice.
Ridiculously nice.